What's up, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Wizards Latest. I'm your host and DC sports fan, Ben Robertson, and on this page, we break down all the biggest headlines surrounding the Washington Wizards. So make sure you like and subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. Drop your comments with any thoughts you might have on the video or anything you want to hear me talk about in the future. I appreciate all of the support. I see you guys consistently down in that comment section. Thanks for tuning in every single day. Remember, videos dropping here on the page Monday through Friday. And jumping in today, want to talk about some interesting comments from Cam Whitmore that came out over the weekend. Tristan Vukcevic named on the Serbia preliminary roster for the EuroBasket tournament this summer. Now the fifth NBA player on that roster. Want to talk about what that means a little bit. Joining now a couple of other Wizards that will be playing some summer basketball in Europe. And lastly, let's not disrespect the Bradley Beal John Wall era. I know that's been the discourse the last couple of days. I understand if you don't think they've done enough here in DC to get their jerseys retired, but the guys could hoop, and I want to talk about it. That'll be our last topic here of the day. Again, thanks for tuning in and chatting about Cam Whitmore here today. As we know, the Maryland native traded back here to the area this offseason from Houston. Whitmore grew up a Wizards fan and attended games as a kid, grew up playing with a guy like Bub Carrington here in the area, and he hosted his own summer basketball camp over this past weekend at his alma mater of Archbishop Spalding. Kind of got to sit down with Scoop B. Robinson, an NBA insider, in a one-on-one interview and express some of, his excitement about being here in DC. Of course, it's been a little bit of an interesting road in the NBA for Whitmore. Remember, he had that draft night slide down to 20 and getting picked up by Houston. Exciting first year, lost some minutes in year number two, and then got moved here to Washington in a decision that, I mean, Houston has, it's been reported at least, sent him here to the Wizards because they felt like it was a place that he could really thrive and progress in his career. But there's three big quotes that I want to talk about coming out of that interview. And I think, honestly, they get a little bit more interesting as we go. So, first off, Cam Whitmore talking a little bit about his defense in that interview. That's something I know you guys have expressed to me, maybe a little bit of a worry with him. Will he really focus on that end of the court? And that's actually something that he says you can't get on the court in the NBA without your defense. And that when he arrived to the league, it wasn't really a priority for him, but he's had to realize again, he's got to focus on that end. And you can make an impact in the league without even scoring, but just with your defensive effort. Again, continues to, follow the defensive identity that Will Dawkins wants to build here in or with the team. Obviously, we've talked about how he's drafted a guy like Trey Johnson, but it seems like everything we're hearing about the discussion about how Trey's playing relates to defense, even though we know what his scoring ability brings. Quote number two from Cam Whitmore is relating to his, of course, Kevin Durant being traded to Houston and sort of maybe the subsequent moving of Whitmore here to DC. He says, I mean, Kevin Durant's a fit, but at the end of the day, that calendar is marked. And what Whitmore's saying right there is that, hey, I get Kevin Durant can play. Obviously, he can do more than play. He's one of the all-time greats in the NBA, and he's, understands the situation there. But at the same time, says, when I see my former team, I'm going right at them, and love that from Cam. Last, quote I thought that was a little spicy out of this interview. He says, I'm not going to lie, I'm really trying to win some games. Talks about how he feels the Eastern Conference is wide open. Maybe 35 to 40 wins this year is Whitmore's at least individual goal. Talked about getting maybe into the play-in. Look, I know as fans, we often talk about how, holding on to that top eight pick next year is likely priority, whether you want to call that tanking, whatever it may be. But I do think it's interesting to look at these perspectives of how maybe fan and front office opinion can or even, just mindset, viewpoint, whatever you want to call it, can really differ from how these players look at things. Remember, the players on the court are going out there trying to compete every single night. Cam Whitmore is, a competitive, tough-minded guy, and I think we actually have a bunch of those, kind of like-minded players, and they're not interested in tanking and losing games. They're interested in getting after it, and I think it makes it kind of a really, I don't know, just interesting thing to balance, or maybe to look at the two perspectives as we move forward. Next thing I want to talk about today, Tristan Vukcevic being named one of the 5 NBA players on the 17-man preliminary Serbia roster for the EuroBasket tournament this summer, starting in late August, I believe. Of course, that roster being headlined by Nikola Jokic. But think that'll be, not sure. I think that 17-man roster is going to get trimmed down a little bit more by tournament time. But I think that it's just going to be great experience for Tristan just to be, in that atmosphere, regardless of if whether he plays a ton or doesn't, just to, learn just from a guy like Jokic, I think will be huge for him. I also just think getting in those international teams, I feel like they just, work so well together and really know how to train and kind of build chemistry. I think that'll be, again, just nothing but a positive thing for him, regardless of how much he may or may not play. Looks like he'll be now the third player on the Wizards playing over in Europe this summer. Alex Sarr and Bilal Koulibaly on the French roster already. And again, same deal. Whatever the roles may be for these guys, I think that international experience really very important, valuable. I think honestly, again, I'll keep saying this, but anytime we get to see young talent on this team on the court, I think it's important, and I'm going to be excited to watch. Just fired up to get to see more Wizards playing basketball here this summer before the regular season begins. And sort of on the Vukcevic discussion, just tell me your, your expectations for him going into next year. Would sort of love to hear the thoughts there. Of course, brought back now on the two-way deal here this off season. My last talking point today. Look, I understand if you don't think that there was enough winning done in sort of the era that they were here to warrant a jersey retirement. 4 playoff appearances together in the time that John Wall and Bradley Beal were together here in DC, who I'm referring to, never made it past the second round. But man, the chatter I've seen the last couple days, talking about these guys like they were bums, and look, I don't know. I just think I don't not sure that's fair to maybe what they meant to this franchise and to the city for so long. Again, both guys in the top 5 or 10 in many statistical categories for the organization. Beal is barely behind Elvin Hayes for the all-time scoring leader for the Wizards. John Wall, the franchise assist and steal leader. Again, I understand if there wasn't just quite enough winning for you to, think that there warrants a jersey retirement. And honestly, especially I think we've definitely maybe closed the book, we could say, on Bradley Beal, because look, if the fan base doesn't think you warrant your jersey retired, isn't that the biggest, tell or testing point for whether, that honor should happen or not? But I do want to say, I think we can all agree that the franchise was severely mismanaged in, the time that those two guys were here and in their primes, and they carried the franchise that was, again, not really super well run. We've discussed the mistakes that were made here on the page a whole bunch. They carried it for the better part of a decade, and I just don't love to see maybe the disrespect for those two players, even though I can understand the sentiment again that maybe a jersey retirement is too lofty of an honor. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the page every single day. Remember, videos dropping here Monday through Friday. I appreciate all of the support, you guys. Drop your comments down below, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching another episode of Wizards Latest.